don't? We say no, and we think that's an important thing. But everything really is in the cloud, and there are times when there is still a need for some on-prem services that you might have, and I'll talk about that as well, because you can still move most of everything into the cloud. And if you still needed a local Active Directory for things, which I'll cover, that might be a good scenario. But let's say, as we start this off, that really at the end, this is what we want to look like. No local Active Directory infrastructure. All of our, whether we're doing desktop as a service through Azure Virtual Machines, through Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365, managing the desktops that are completely joined to Azure Active Directory, managed through Intune, controlling the device lifecycle through that, using things like managed devices for universal print, managed phones. Again, all cloud services that you have, and many of you might even be close to this, with the exception that you still have some local Active Directory that's going on, and we'll talk about that. So first off, when we think about where many people are, legacy infrastructure, and it's tough to say because there's Windows Server 2019, there's still Azure Active Directory, Microsoft is still investing in it because, like I said, there are some reasons why you need to have that, because of certain applications that need to be on-prem. You're a manufacturing organization. The ERP system has to work with the local AD. But even there, we found where customers can remove that dependency and still have what they need because they're a 24-hour shop. When the network goes down, the machines don't care, and we have to continue to operate. But many other organizations don't need that. But there's some small cases. So do you have to keep a local Active Directory? You could, or you could not, and still manage those devices through the cloud. Another webinar for that. But in some of these areas, you might have servers deployed. You might have multiple offices, and you have an Active Directory domain domain controllers deployed in different locations and file servers in different locations. They could be co-load, they can be in the office, they can be wherever it is. Understanding that they are all out there, and there's this networking. Again, when you start to if you're more of a CFO or financially driven, CIO, and you start really adding up the math, right? Of wait a minute, I have, in order for this topology to keep working, I have to continue to invest in, site-to-site VPNs or an MPLS network in order to keep those servers talking for what? Desktops? So you save money on that, the support contracts, the network, it just starts to add up. It's not just the price of a server. Yeah, I buy a server, I have that, and that's cheaper than putting the other licensing. You got to really add up all the costs, to really look at it. But it's also the people that you have to have, the management you have to have. It just adds up. And the other part is really any servers that you might even have deployed in Azure to support local Active Directory or remote connectivity. So you look at all of these pieces that really is your infrastructure. And some of the biggest challenges that we see when you are today is, well, when we provision new workstations or desktops, if we're doing it the more traditional model, we haven't really applied endpoint management. When we have custom images that we create, and every time somebody new comes on board, you may have to get some new equipment and send it to the IT person because they need it locally. There's strategies to do it, but they're more complex to get that server up and running. Join the local Active Directory environment, making sure that's good, even if it's hybrid with Endpoint Manager and Azure Active Directory. You still got to make sure those are configured properly. The local security for the application. There's just all this overhead just to get people started on their applications. This session, I'm not going to talk about specifically how to do that with Endpoint Manager and Azure AD, but we've had, I think, some sessions, and there'll be future webinars that we do that talks a little bit more about that specific scenario. But this adds more overhead. Every time they want to access, the users want to access local services, they have to VPN in. And so now they VPN in, and that also maps to our file server. Even though we're still using SharePoint and OneDrive, it's they're still bound to this. It's on our E drive, and the application I use only works when I'm connected via VPN with the E drive. So now we have to maintain the VPN and the connectivity. Yes, there's things like always on VPN that's available with Windows 11 and Windows, but it's just more and more infrastructure you have to manage. And then really ensuring that the policies that you have, if there's policies I have 4 workstations in this example that I need to, either for compliance reasons or for management reasons, that I need to push out to those users, if they aren't VPNing in, and there's not an opportunity that the GPO, the group policy objects, have in order to to get ran and honored, because maybe they were connected, it didn't run the GPO refresh, and then they disconnected. You have what you think you have managed devices out there. You really don't, because it doesn't listen that way. So yes, you can start to transition things to more endpoint manager again, but these are some of the heartaches that we have just from the onboard them, manage them, keep the infrastructure. So